Excuse me, sir. I'd like to check my account balance, please. The boy stood on his toes to reach the counter, fingers gripping a brown envelope worn thin at the edges. The bank manager paused. He looked down slowly. Cracked shoes, faded jacket, skin too dark, voice too soft. Then he laughed. Not quietly, not politely. A loud, careless laugh that echoed through the marble lobby. "This is a private bank," the manager said. "Not a place for street kids." A few customers smiled. Someone whispered, "Unreal." The boy swallowed. "My grandfather opened the account for me," he said. "He passed away." That only made it worse. What no one in that room understood, not the laughing manager, not the silent tellers, not the people pretending not to see, was that within the hour, the same man mocking the boy would be staring at a screen in disbelief, because the account balance wasn't small, and neither was the legacy behind it. Before we continue, tap like and subscribe, because what happens next will completely change how this moment ends. Elijah Brooks had practiced what he would say 17 times on the bus ride over. Be polite, say please, don't cry. His grandfather had taught him that. "Manners cost nothing, boy," he'd say, wiping grease off his hands after a long shift at the garage. But they're worth more than gold when the world's watching. The world was watching now. The First National Bank sat on the corner of Madison and Fifth like a fortress made of marble and glass. Elijah had never been inside before. His grandfather had, though, every Friday after work for 37 years. One day, his grandfather had told him 3 months before he died, "You'll walk in there, and they'll treat you right, because you'll have something they respect." Elijah pushed through the revolving doors. The cold air hit him first, then the silence. Everything inside was white. White floors, white walls, white people in expensive suits, moving like they owned time itself. Elijah's sneakers squeaked on the polished tile. He froze. A woman in pearls glanced at him, then away, like he was a stain she was trained to ignore. He walked toward the counter. His heart hammered. Behind the glass sat a man in his 50s, balding, with a name tag that read, "Richard Pemberton, branch manager." He was typing something on his computer, not looking up. "Excuse me, sir." Pemberton's fingers paused. He glanced up, saw Elijah, and his expression shifted from neutral to confused to annoyed in under 3 seconds. "Yes?" His tone was flat. "I'd like to check my account balance, please." Elijah slid the envelope across the counter. Inside was a bank card, a faded letter, and a small photograph of a man with kind eyes and calloused hands. Pemberton didn't touch the envelope. "How old are you?" 10. "And where are your parents?" "My mom's at work. My grandfather passed away. He left me an account here." Pemberton leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Kid, this is a private institution. We don't do charity accounts or school projects. If your mom opened a savings account, you'd need her here to access it." "It's not a school project. It's real. My grandfather—" "Listen." Pemberton's voice dropped, like he was explaining something to someone slow. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but this isn't the place. There's a community credit union 2 blocks down. They're better suited for—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Your situation." Elijah felt heat rising in his chest. "My grandfather banked here for 37 years. "Sure he did." Pemberton smirked. "What was his name?" "James Brooks." "James Brooks." Pemberton typed slowly, exaggerating each keystroke like he was humoring a child's fantasy. He squinted at the screen, scrolled, then shook his head. "Nothing comes up. No account under that name linked to a minor." "It's under my name. Elijah Brooks." Pemberton stopped. His smile faded. He typed again, slower this time. Then he laughed. It started as a chuckle, then grew louder, uncontrolled. He turned to a teller 2 stations over. "Mary Ann, you gotta see this." Marianne, a woman with sharp eyeliner and sharper judgment, leaned over. What? This kid says he's got an account here. Says his grandfather was a client for 37 years. Pemberton was still laughing. James Brooks. Ever heard of him? Marianne frowned at the screen, then at Elijah. No, and I've been here 15 years. Exactly. Pemberton turned back to Elijah, his amusement now edged with irritation. Look, kid, I don't know what you're trying to pull, but fraud's a serious thing. You understand? If someone gave you that card as a joke, you need to leave. Now. Elijah's hands trembled. He opened the envelope and pulled out the card. It was platinum. Scratched, but real. Pemberton's eyes narrowed. Where'd you get that? My grandfather left it for me. Let me see it. Elijah hesitated, then slid it forward. Pemberton picked it up, turned it over, held it to the light. His expression shifted. The card was real. The wearer was real. This wasn't some fake pulled off the internet, but that didn't make sense. Stay here, Pemberton said, his voice tight. He stood, walked toward the back offices, card in hand. Elijah stood alone at the counter, breathing too fast, feeling every eye in the lobby on him. A security guard by the door adjusted his stance, watching. No one said a word. And in the silence, Elijah remembered something his grandfather used to say. The world's going to test you, boy, not with questions, with how they look at you when you walk in a room. You pass that test by standing tall, even when your knees are shaking. Elijah's knees were shaking, but he stayed. Richard Pemberton didn't come back for 8 minutes. 8 minutes where Elijah stood at the counter, hands flat on the marble, while people walked past him like he wasn't there. A man in a navy suit glided up to the next window. The teller smiled immediately. Good afternoon, Mr. Lawson. How can I help you today? No waiting, no questions, just service. Elijah glanced over. The teller didn't look at him once. When Pemberton finally returned, he wasn't alone. Another man followed him, younger, shorter, with wire-rimmed glasses and a tablet tucked under one arm. His name tag read, Dennis Cho, compliance officer. Pemberton slapped the platinum card onto the counter. All right, kid, let's try this again. Where did you get this? I told you. My grandfather left it for me. That's not an answer. Where did you find it? I didn't find it. He gave it to me before he died. Cho stepped forward, voice calm but clinical. Elijah, right? That's your name? Elijah nodded. Okay. I need you to understand something. This card is linked to a corporate trust account. That means it's not a personal checking account like your parents might have. It's a high-tier financial instrument used by estate planners, business owners, people with substantial assets. He let that sink in. So you can see why we're a little confused. I'm not lying. No one said you were lying, Cho replied smoothly. But we need to verify a few things. Do you have identification? Elijah pulled out a school ID. Cho took it, scanned it with his phone. Pemberton watched, arms crossed, jaw tight. Do you have a parent or guardian with you? Cho asked. My mom's at work. She doesn't get off till 6. Then you'll need to come back with her. My grandfather said I could access it when I turned 10. I turned 10 last month. Pemberton scoffed. Your grandfather said a lot of things, apparently. Elijah's voice cracked. He wasn't a liar. Then, where is he? Pemberton leaned in, voice low and sharp. Why isn't he here explaining this himself? Because he's dead. The word landed hard. The lobby noise dimmed. A woman near the ATM turned away. Pemberton's face didn't soften. If anything, he looked more suspicious. Listen, kid. I don't know who put you up to this. Maybe it's a prank. Maybe someone's using you. But this is a serious institution. We have protocols. And one of those protocols is that we don't let unaccompanied minors walk in off the street with high-value cards they can't explain. I can explain it. His name is... James Brooks. Yeah, you said that. Pemberton turned to Cho. Run it again. Full name, deceased accounts, anything flagged for transfer to a minor. Cho typed on his tablet, his brow furrowed. There's something here. Pemberton straightened. What? A trust account. Established in 1987. Primary holder deceased as of 3 months ago. Beneficiary listed as Elijah James Brooks. Activation upon 10th birthday or legal custodian request. Pemberton snatched the tablet. His eyes scanned the screen, then he looked at Elijah, and for the first time there was something other than contempt in his expression. Confusion, maybe fear. What's the balance? Pemberton asked quietly. Cho hesitated. It's restricted visibility. I'd need supervisor clearance to pull it up. Sir, pull it up. Cho tapped the screen. A loading icon spun. Then numbers appeared. Pemberton went pale. He stepped back from the counter, handed the tablet back like it burned him. That's not possible. What's not possible? Elijah asked. Pemberton ignored him. Run a fraud check. Full audit. There's no way. Sir, the account's been active for 37 years. Monthly deposits. No withdrawals. It's clean. Then someone made a mistake. Or, Cho said carefully, the boy's telling the truth. Pemberton's jaw clenched. He looked at Elijah like he was a puzzle that didn't fit. Not with the cracked shoes, not with the faded jacket, not with the skin that made people nervous in places like this. You're telling me, Pemberton said slowly, that your grandfather, who you claim was some kind of working man, saved enough to open a trust account here? He worked at Morrison's Auto Repair, Elijah said. 42 years. He fixed cars. A mechanic. Yes, sir. And he just saved his way into a private banking trust. He said every dollar mattered. He didn't buy things he didn't need. He didn't eat out. He fixed everything himself. He said it wasn't about how much you make. It's about how much you keep. Pemberton stared at him. Then he turned to the security guard by the door and motioned him over. The guard, a broad-shouldered man named Luis, approached slowly. Problem? Keep an eye on him, Pemberton said, nodding toward Elijah. I need to make a call. Luis looked down at the boy. He causing trouble? Not yet. Elijah's stomach dropped. I didn't do anything wrong. Then you won't mind waiting, Pemberton said coldly. He turned and walked toward the back offices, Cho trailing behind. Luis stayed. He didn't say anything, didn't move, just stood 3 feet away, with his hands clasped in front of him. Elijah felt the weight of it, the watching, the suspicion, the assumption that he didn't belong. He thought about leaving, just walking out, going home, pretending this never happened. But then he thought about his grandfather's voice. You belong anywhere you have the courage to stand, boy. Don't let nobody tell you different. So Elijah stayed and waited. 20 minutes passed. Elijah sat in a chair by the wall, the kind of chair that wasn't meant for sitting, just for waiting. Uncomfortable. Visible. A chair that said, you're not important enough for privacy, but we need you where we can see you. Luis stood nearby, pretending not to watch. But Elijah could feel the weight of his gaze, the way his hand rested near his belt, the way he shifted every time Elijah moved. People came and went. A woman in heels, a man with a briefcase, a couple discussing mortgage rates. All of them were helped immediately. No questions, no accusations, just smiles and service. Elijah pulled the photograph from the envelope. His grandfather stared back at him, old, tired, but smiling. It was taken at Elijah's 9th birthday. His grandfather had saved for months to buy him a bicycle. It wasn't new, but it was his. I miss you, Grandpa, Elijah whispered. Talking to yourself, kid? Elijah looked up. A man in his 30s stood near the ATM, smirking. He wore a designer watch and shoes that probably cost more than Elijah's mom made in a month. "I'm fine," Elijah said quietly. "You sure? You look a little lost." The man glanced at Luis, then back at Elijah. "This isn't really a place for kids, you know that, right?" Elijah didn't answer. The man chuckled and walked away. 30 minutes. Pemberton finally reappeared. His face was tight, his movements sharp. He walked past Elijah without looking at him, went straight to the teller stations and pulled Marianne aside. They spoke in low voices. She glanced at Elijah, frowned, then nodded. Pemberton turned. "All right, kid, come here." Elijah stood, legs stiff. He walked to the counter. "We've verified the account exists," Pemberton said, "but there's a problem." Elijah's heart sank. "What problem?" "The account requires dual authorization for any minor access. That means your mother or legal guardian has to be present to confirm identity and intent. Without that, we can't proceed." "But my grandfather said—" "I don't care what your grandfather said. I care about federal banking regulations. You're 10. You don't get to walk in here alone and demand access to a trust account no matter what's in it." "I'm not demanding anything. I just want to check the balance, that's all. And I just told you. You can't. Not without your mother. She's at work. She can't leave. Then come back when she can." Elijah's voice shook. "You're saying I have to leave?" "I'm saying you need to follow the rules. I am following the rules. You're just making up new ones because you don't think I should be here." Pemberton's eyes went cold. "Excuse me? You didn't ask anyone else for their parents. You didn't make anyone else wait. You just helped them. That's because they weren't children. With trust accounts they can't explain. I explained it. You just didn't believe me." Pemberton leaned forward. "You know what I think? I think someone gave you that card. I think you found it, or stole it, or someone's using you to test our system. And I think you're in way over your head." Elijah's hands clenched. "My grandfather wasn't a thief, and neither am I." "Then prove it. Bring your mother. Bring documentation. Bring something other than a sob story and an attitude." The words hit like a slap. Elijah felt tears burning behind his eyes, but he refused to let them fall. "Not here. Not in front of these people." "Fine," he said quietly. "I'll come back." "Good. And next time, dress appropriately." Elijah froze. "What?" "This is a professional institution. If you're going to do business. Here, at least look the part." The air left the room. Marianne looked away. Luis shifted uncomfortably. A customer near the door stopped mid-step. Elijah stared at Pemberton. "My grandfather bought me these shoes." "Well, maybe he should have bought you better ones." Something inside Elijah cracked, not broke, cracked, like ice under pressure, ready to split. He picked up the envelope, slid the photograph inside, turned toward the door, and then he stopped. "My grandfather worked 42 years, so I wouldn't have to feel like this," Elijah said, voice steady now. "He saved every dollar, so I'd have something nobody could take away. He told me that people like you would test me, that they'd look at my shoes, my skin, my age, and decide I wasn't worth their time." Pemberton said nothing. He was right. Elijah walked toward the door. Luis stepped aside. The revolving glass spun, and he was gone. Inside, the bank returned to normal. Phones rang. Keyboards clicked. Business continued. But Marianne wouldn't look at Pemberton, and Luis, for the first time in 8 years of working security, felt ashamed of his silence. Elijah sat on the bench outside the bank for a long time. He didn't cry. He'd promised himself he wouldn't. Instead, he opened the envelope again and pulled out the letter. He'd read it 100 times since his grandfather died, but today he needed to hear the words again. The handwriting was shaky. His grandfather had written it in the hospital 2 days before he passed. "Elijah, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And if you're reading it at the bank, then you tried to do what I asked. I'm proud of you for that. I know they probably didn't make it easy. People like us don't get easy. But that's all right. Easy doesn't build character. Struggle does. I started that account the day you were born. Put in $20. Didn't seem like much. But I kept going. Every week. 20 here, 50 there. Some months, just 10. Your grandma thought I was crazy. James, she'd say, we need that money now. And she was right. We did. But I kept saving, because I wanted you to have something I never had. A choice. I worked hard, boy. 42 years under cars, fixing engines, breathing in oil and exhaust. I wasn't rich. I wasn't important. But I was steady, and steady beats flashy every time. The money's not the point, Elijah. The point is what it represents. It's proof that a man who started with nothing can still build something. It's proof that you don't need permission to be worth something. You just need discipline. When you walk into that bank, they're going to look at you funny. They're going to ask questions. They might even try to turn you away. But don't you run. Don't you shrink. You stand tall. You speak clear. You show them that worth isn't something they get to decide. You're my grandson. You're a Brooks. And that name means something. Not because of money, but because of the man who carried it for 73 years and never bowed to nobody. I love you, boy. Make me proud. Grandpa Elijah folded the letter carefully and put it back in the envelope. He thought about his grandfather's hands, scarred, rough, strong. Hands that had fixed 1,000 engines, held him when he was scared, taught him how to tie his shoes. He thought about the shoes he was wearing now, the ones Pemberton had mocked. His grandfather had bought them 2 years ago. They were too big back then, but his grandfather said, "You'll grow into them." And he had. They were worn now. The soles were separating. The laces were frayed, but they were his, and they were enough. Elijah stood. He looked back at the bank, the marble, the glass, the cold, perfect facade. Then he started walking home. Luis Martinez had been a security guard for 8 years. 8 years of watching. 8 years of standing. 8 years of being invisible until someone needed him to be a wall. He was good at his job. He knew when to step in and when to step back. He knew how to read a room, how to spot trouble before it started, and he knew without question that the kid wasn't trouble. But he'd watched anyway. He'd stood there while Pemberton laughed, while Mary Ann looked away, while a 10-year-old boy was treated like a criminal for having the wrong shoes and the wrong skin. And he'd done nothing. Now, standing at his post by the door, Luis felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Shame. "You good, man?" Luis turned. It was Marcus, the other security guard, just coming back from his break. "Yeah, I'm good." Marcus looked toward the counter, then back at Luis. "What happened?" "Kid came in, said he had an account. Manager didn't believe him." "That's it?" Luis hesitated. "Manager was rough with him." Marcus frowned. "How rough?" "Rough enough." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Marcus said, "He do anything wrong?" "No." "Then why didn't you say something?" Luis looked at him. "Would you have?" Marcus didn't answer, because they both knew the truth. In a place like this, security didn't question management. Security didn't defend customers. Security kept the peace. And peace meant keeping quiet. "Kid left already?" Marcus asked. "Yeah, about 10 minutes ago." "Good. Probably better that way." Luis wasn't so sure. Inside the bank, Pemberton was back at his station typing furiously. Mary Ann stood nearby, arms crossed, looking uncomfortable. "You think he was lying?" she asked quietly. "Doesn't matter," Pemberton said without looking up. "Policy is policy. No unaccompanied minors. No exceptions." "But the account was real. So what? That doesn't change the rules." "Richard, he's 10 years old. His grandfather just died. Maybe we could have... Could have what? Pemberton snapped. Bent the rules because you felt sorry for him? That's not how banking works, Marianne. We have protocols for a reason. I know, but nothing. If we start making exceptions, where does it end? Every kid with a sob story gets access to accounts they can't manage. Every smooth talker gets to bypass security because they tug at your heartstrings. Marianne bit her lip. He wasn't a smooth talker. He was just a kid asking for help. And I told him what he needed to do. If he comes back with his mother, we'll help him. Until then, this conversation is over. Marianne walked away. Pemberton kept typing, but his hands were shaking, because deep down, in a place he wouldn't admit existed, he knew the kid wasn't lying. He knew the account was legitimate. He knew the grandfather had probably saved every spare dollar for 37 years, living modestly, sacrificing quietly, building something for a boy who would one day need it. And he knew he'd treated that legacy like trash. But admitting that would mean admitting he was wrong. And Richard Pemberton didn't do wrong. He did policy. He did procedure. He did what kept the bank running smoothly, and his performance reviews spotless. The kid would get over it. Kids always did. At least, that's what he told himself. Across town, Elijah walked through his neighborhood. The buildings here were different, older. Cracked sidewalks, chain-link fences, corner stores with barred windows. This was home. He passed Mr. Chen's grocery, where his grandfather used to buy day-old bread for half price. He passed the laundromat, where his mom worked double shifts. He passed the playground where the swings were broken, but kids played anyway. When he reached his apartment building, he climbed the 3 flights of stairs. The elevator had been broken for 2 years, and unlocked the door. His mom wasn't home yet. She wouldn't be for another 4 hours. Elijah dropped his backpack, sat on the couch, and stared at the envelope in his hands. He'd failed. His grandfather had trusted him with one thing, one simple thing. And he'd failed. The tears came then, not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet, steady tears that soaked into the worn fabric of the couch. He cried for his grandfather, for the shoes, for the way Pemberton had looked at him like he was nothing. And he cried because part of him believed it. Maybe he didn't belong in that bank. Maybe people like him weren't supposed to have accounts like that. Maybe his grandfather had been wrong. But then he heard it, a voice, not out loud, in his memory. You belong anywhere you have the courage to stand, boy. Elijah wiped his eyes. He stood up, walked to the phone, and dialed the number his mom had made him memorize. She answered on the 3rd ring. Elijah, baby, what's wrong? Mom, I need you to come home. I'm at work, sweetheart. I can't just... It's about Grandpa's account. I went to the bank like he said. They wouldn't help me. There was a long pause. They what? They said I needed you there. They said I couldn't do it alone. His mom's voice changed. It went from tired to sharp in an instant. What bank? First National, on Madison. I'll be there in an hour. Mom, you don't have to. I'll be there in an hour. She hung up. Elijah sat back down, and for the first time since leaving the bank, he felt something other than shame. He felt hope. An hour later, Carmen Brooks walked through the doors of First National Bank, like a woman with a mission. She was still wearing her laundromat uniform, blue polo, name tag, sneakers that squeaked on the marble floor. She was 42, tired, and had exactly 30 minutes before her supervisor would notice she was gone. But her son had been humiliated, and that changed everything. Elijah followed behind her, quieter now, watching the way his mom's shoulders were set, the way her jaw was tight. Pemberton saw them coming. He stood up slowly, adjusting his tie. Can I help you? You spoke to my son earlier, Carmen said, her voice controlled but hard. Elijah Brooks. He came in to check an account his grandfather left him. Ah, yes. I explained to him that we need parental authorization for minor account access. It's standard protocol. And I'm here now, so let's do this. Pemberton hesitated. I'll need identification and documentation proving legal guardianship. Carmen pulled out her driver's license and Elijah's birth certificate. Here. Pemberton examined them slowly, turning them over like he was searching for flaws. And do you have a death certificate for the account holder? His name was James Brooks, my father-in-law. And yes. She pulled a folded document from her purse. Here. Pemberton took it, read it, handed it back. This is a copy. It's a certified copy. Signed and stamped by the county clerk. We typically require originals. Carmen leaned forward. Then typically is about to change. Because my son came here, following his grandfather's instructions, and you treated him like a criminal. You mocked his clothes. You made him wait while you helped everyone else. And you accused him of fraud. Ma'am, I was simply following. You were following your assumptions. And your assumptions were wrong. Pemberton's face flushed. I don't appreciate your tone. And I don't appreciate the way you spoke to my child. Mary Ann appeared at Pemberton's side. Ma'am, if we could just pull up the account, Carmen said, and right now, Elijah James Brooks. Trust account opened in 1987 by James Brooks. Mary Ann glanced at Pemberton. He nodded stiffly. She typed. The screen loaded. Her eyes widened. Well? Carmen asked. Mary Ann looked at Pemberton. It's substantial. How substantial? I can't disclose specific amounts without... I'm the legal guardian. Disclose it. Pemberton stepped in. Ma'am, regardless of the account balance, there are procedures. We need to verify the transfer of beneficiary rights, confirm identity, ensure... You need to do your job, which is help customers, not profile them. I did not profile. You called my son a fraud. You told him to dress better. You made him feel like he didn't belong in this building. Carmen's voice cracked just slightly. His grandfather saved for 37 years. 37, every week, every month, every year. He worked himself to the bone so Elijah would have something, and you laughed at him. Pemberton opened his mouth, then closed it, because she was right, and everyone in the lobby knew it. Luis, standing by the door, felt his chest tighten. Marcus, beside him, looked away. I want to speak to your supervisor, Carmen said. I am the branch manager. I don't have a... Then I want to speak to whoever you report to. Regional manager. Corporate. I don't care. Because what happened here today was wrong. And I'm not leaving until someone admits it. Pemberton's jaw clenched. Ma'am, if you don't lower your voice, I'll have to ask security to escort you out. Excuse me? This is a private institution. If you are going to cause a disturbance, I'm not causing a disturbance. I'm demanding respect. You're demanding special treatment. I'm demanding the same treatment you'd give anyone else. Pemberton turned to Luis. Escort them out. Luis didn't move. Did you hear me? Luis looked at Pemberton, then at Carmen, then at Elijah. The boy's eyes were wide, scared, hopeful, all at once. Sir, Luis said slowly, I don't think that's necessary. I'm not asking your opinion. I'm giving you an order. She's not being violent. She's not threatening anyone. She's just asking for help. And I'm telling you to remove her from the premises. Marcus stepped forward. Luis, man, don't... But Luis was already shaking his head. No, I'm not doing this. Pemberton's face went red. Then you're fired. The lobby went silent. Luis pulled off his badge, set it on the counter, and walked toward the door. Carmen stared at him. You didn't have to do that. Luis stopped, looked back. Yeah, I did. And then he was gone. Elijah watched him leave, something breaking and reforming inside his chest. Someone had stood up. Someone had chosen right over easy, and it changed everything. Pemberton was still reeling from Luis's exit when the doors opened again. A man walked in, 65, black, wearing a simple suit and carrying a leather briefcase worn soft with age. He moved like someone who didn't need to announce himself. His presence did it for him. His name was Daniel Brooks, Elijah's uncle, and James Brooks's younger brother. He saw Carmen and Elijah immediately. His face hardened. What happened? Carmen turned. Daniel! I didn't call you. Elijah did. Daniel walked toward them, his eyes never leaving Pemberton. He called me from the payphone outside, said there was a problem. Pemberton straightened. Sir, this is a private matter between my nephew and a bank manager who doesn't know when he's made a mistake. Daniel set his briefcase on the counter. My name is Daniel Brooks. I'm a senior loan officer at United Federal. I'm also the executor of James Brooks's estate, and I'm here to make sure my brother's wishes are honored. Pemberton blinked. You work in banking? 28 years. I know policy, Mr. Pemberton. I know procedure. And I know discrimination when I see it. I didn't discriminate. You laughed at a 10-year-old boy. You accused him of fraud. You refused service. And when his mother arrived to provide authorization, you tried to have her removed. Daniel's voice was calm, surgical. So either you're incompetent or you're prejudiced. Which would you prefer I report to your corporate office? Pemberton went pale. I thought so. Daniel turned to Marianne. Pull up the account. Full access. I have executor authorization. He handed her a document. Marianne took it, scanned it, then typed quickly. The screen loaded. Her face went slack. What? Pemberton demanded. The balance is $742,000. The lobby went silent. Carmen gasped. What? And that's just the primary trust, Marianne continued, her voice shaking. There's also a secondary investment account linked to it. Total assets are... She paused, recalculating. Just over $900,000. Elijah stared at the screen, unable to process the numbers. Daniel smiled sadly. My brother was a mechanic, but he was also the most disciplined man I ever knew. He didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't gamble. He lived in the same house for 40 years, drove the same truck for 20. And every single week, he put money away. He turned to Pemberton. You looked at my nephew and saw a poor black kid in cheap shoes. You looked at his mother and saw a laundromat worker who didn't belong here. You made assumptions based on appearance, and you were wrong. Pemberton said nothing. Here's what's going to happen, Daniel continued. You're going to process the account access. You're going to apologize, sincerely, to both Elijah and Carmen. And then you're going to write a report to your regional manager explaining what happened here today and why you failed to uphold the standards of this institution. I don't take orders from... You do, if you want to keep your job. Because if I walk out of here without resolution, my next stop is corporate headquarters. And trust me, they'll be very interested to hear how one of their branch managers treated a nearly $1 million account holder. Pemberton looked at Marianne, at Marcus, at the customers watching from across the lobby. He was cornered. Fine, he said quietly. I'll process the account. And, Pemberton turned to Elijah. His voice was stiff, mechanical. I apologize for any misunderstanding. That's not an apology, Daniel said. Try again. Pemberton's jaw worked. Then, finally, he looked at Elijah, really looked at him. I'm sorry, he said. I was wrong. I judged you unfairly, and I treated you with disrespect. You didn't deserve that. Elijah nodded slowly. Pemberton turned to Carmen. And I apologize to you as well. Carmen said nothing, but she accepted it with a nod. Daniel turned to Elijah. You want to check your balance now? Elijah looked at his mom. She squeezed his hand. Yeah, he said, I do. Marianne processed the account access with shaking hands. The room was still silent. Customers lingered, pretending to use the ATM or read brochures, but everyone was watching. Okay, Marianne said softly. Elijah, you're all set. The account is now active under your name, with your mother listed as co-trustee until you turn 18. She turned the monitor so he could see. Account holder, Elijah James Brooks. Primary balance, 743,389. Secondary investment account, 167,421.87. Total assets, 909,810.06. Elijah stared at the numbers. They didn't feel real. "My grandpa did this?" he whispered. Daniel nodded. "Every week, for 37 years. Started with $20. Some weeks it was 50, some months just 10, but he never stopped. The bank's investment team helped grow it. Your grandfather was smart about it. Conservative funds, steady growth, no risks. But why?" "Because he wanted you to have choices," Carmen said, her voice thick. "He wanted you to go to college without debt. He wanted you to start a business if you wanted. He wanted you to never feel trapped by money the way he did." Elijah looked at the photograph in the envelope. His grandfather's kind, tired eyes stared back. "He worked so hard," Elijah said. "He did, and he was proud to do it, because it was for you." Tears ran down Elijah's face now, unchecked. Not tears of sadness, tears of gratitude, of loss, of overwhelming, crushing love for a man who had given everything so his grandson could have more. Daniel placed a hand on Elijah's shoulder. "Your grandfather used to tell me, it's not about what you have, it's about what you do with it. He lived modestly so you wouldn't have to, but he'd want you to use this wisely, to honor the sacrifice." Elijah nodded. "I will." Marianne printed out an account summary and handed it to Carmen. "If you need anything else, please let us know." Her voice was sincere now, respectful. The difference was staggering. Pemberton stood off to the side, silent. He didn't apologize again, didn't try to smooth things over. He just watched as the family he dismissed as insignificant walked toward the door, carrying nearly $1 million in generational wealth. As they reached the exit, Elijah stopped. He turned back. Pemberton met his eyes. "My grandfather said people would test me," Elijah said. "He said they'd judge me by my shoes, my skin, my age. And he said the test wasn't whether they respected me. The test was whether I respected myself." He held up the envelope. "I passed. Did you?" Pemberton said nothing. Elijah turned and walked out. Outside, the sun was setting. Carmen, Elijah, and Daniel stood on the sidewalk, the city moving around them like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. "What happens now?" Elijah asked. Daniel closed his briefcase. "Now, you and your mom sit down with a financial advisor. You make a plan. You decide how to honor your grandfather's wishes, college fund, housing, investments, whatever makes sense." "And the bank?" Carmen asked. "I'll file a formal complaint with corporate. What happened today was unacceptable. Pemberton should face consequences." "Will he?" Daniel sighed. "Maybe. Depends on how much they value their reputation versus protecting their own." Carmen looked at Elijah. "How do you feel, baby?" Elijah thought about it. He felt angry, sad, relieved, proud, but mostly he felt seen. "I feel like Grandpa knew," he said. "He knew this would happen, and he still told me to go." "Why do you think that is?" "Because the money wasn't the test. Standing up was." Carmen pulled him into a hug. "You're so much like him." They stood there for a long moment, holding each other, letting the weight of the day settle. Then Daniel said, "You know what your grandfather would want you to do right now?" "What?" "Get some ice cream. Celebrate. He always said, when you win, enjoy it. When you lose, learn from it. But never let either one define you." Elijah smiled. "Okay." They started walking. Behind them, inside the bank, Pemberton sat at his desk, staring at his computer screen. Marianne approached. "You okay?" "No." She didn't say anything else. There wasn't anything to say. Pemberton thought about the boy's face, the cracked shoes, the worn envelope, the way he'd stood there, quiet and steady, even when everything in the room told him he didn't belong. And he thought about the number on the screen, $900,000, a lifetime of sacrifice, a lifetime of discipline, a lifetime of love poured into an account so a boy could have something his grandfather never did. Pemberton had looked at that boy and seen nothing. And he'd been wrong. The next morning, Luis Martinez sat in a coffee shop, scrolling through job listings. His phone buzzed. It was a text from Marcus. Pemberton's getting transferred. Corporate's investigating. Thought you'd want to know. Luis stared at the message. He didn't feel vindicated. He didn't feel proud. He just felt tired. But when he thought about the boy, about Elijah standing in that lobby, refusing to shrink, he felt something else. Hope. Because if a 10-year-old could stand up to a system designed to diminish him, then maybe the system could change. Maybe it had to. 3 months later, Elijah sat in his new school. It wasn't the neighborhood school anymore. It was a private academy across town, the kind with clean hallways, new books, and teachers who knew his name. His mom had cried when they got the acceptance letter. Your grandpa would be so proud. Elijah carried the photograph everywhere now. It was tucked in his backpack, a reminder of where he came from and who had made it possible. During lunch, a kid asked him, "How'd you afford this place?" Elijah thought about lying, thought about saying it was a scholarship, or that his family was rich. But then he remembered his grandfather's words. Never be ashamed of where you started. Be proud of how far you've come. My grandfather saved for me, Elijah said. He worked hard his whole life so I could be here. The kid nodded. That's cool. And it was, not because of the money, not because of the school, but because Elijah understood now what his grandfather had been trying to teach him. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you build inside the people you love. It's the strength to stand when the world tells you to kneel. It's the courage to believe you're worth something, even when no one else does. And it's the quiet, unshakable knowledge that respect isn't given. It's earned, $1 at a time, one day at a time, one moment of dignity at a time. Elijah opened his notebook and started writing. At the top of the page, he wrote, "What I learned from my grandfather." And underneath, in careful letters, that worth isn't measured in shoes or skin or age. It's measured in character. And character is the one thing nobody can take away. He smiled. And somewhere, he knew, his grandfather was smiling too. If this story moved you, remember, respect should never depend on how someone looks. And silence is how injustice survives. Share this story. Let it remind you that dignity isn't something we give. It's something we recognize. And legacy isn't built in moments. It's built in decades of small, steady, sacrificial choices.